Garth knows all of you, but if you can, just please, reinstate your name and your outlet when asking Garth a question. Garth, can you hear us all right?
I think so.
Great. We got you loud and clear, and we're going to go ahead and get started right into questioning. So, Doug, first question up to you. Mike should be open. Go ahead.
Hey, Garth. Doug Robertson, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Whenever I've asked you in the past about Carlos Bocanegra's future, you had said something along the lines of there's time. What resulted in him running out of time, so to speak?
That's a good question, Doug. When I came in, was really focused on trying to evaluate everybody and give everybody a chance. And I had success in both Salt Lake and Seattle with taking that measured approach. And so I came here, and Atlanta's a bigger club than both those two, and really felt like, hey, there are going to be some good points here, and I don't want to move too quickly without emphasizing those. And I felt like over the course of the first year, we made progress. I thought the summer transfer window was a success last year. And then we built and the team improved as we headed toward the playoffs. And that led us to decide that we should give everybody this year. And obviously that didn't go to plan. And so earlier this year, we parted ways with our head coach because that was the best way we felt to try to jumpstart this season. But the decision was made at that time too, that Carlos, we wanted to continue because the plans were in place for our summer transfer window, and we needed a general manager in place, a technical director in place in Carlos's case, to execute the plan for the summer transfer window. And in fact, one of Carlos's core competencies was in signing big players. It signed Joseph Martinez and Miguel Almiron and Yorgos Yakimakis and Thiago Almada, and 3 newcomers of the year. And so we thought that was a really good use of Carlos's skill set. And likewise, when the window closed, then we really wanted to focus on what was best for the club going forward in 2025. And that's what we're focused on doing. We are through some of the difficult contracts that we had to process and move on. And we now enter into the 2025 season with 2 designated player spots open. And I think it makes it a very attractive position for both a new general manager and a new head coach. In the short term, I will be acting as the general manager and will lead the coach search process and will lead the player acquisition processes as well as the GM search as we go forward. We believe we can make the playoffs in 2024. We are sitting in the last playoff spot. We think as we integrate Alexei Moranchik, our team is going to continue to get better and better. So we're very optimistic now with 2 home games coming off a big rivalry win at Charlotte. We feel like we have some momentum starting to build. And so we're excited to make the playoffs here in 2024 and then give ourselves maximum flexibility going into 2025.
Next question will go to Felipe Cardenas. Felipe, go ahead.
Thanks, Garth. What's going to be your approach in filling this role of GM, sporting director, CSO? You mentioned there is a coach search that you're also taking on. What's the profile for the next GM of Atlanta United? And would you consider a dual role where perhaps you hire one person for both coach and GM?
We will not do a dual role. We believe very strongly in the separation of church and state. You need one person to do on the field, one person to do off the field. That's the structure I've had my whole career. So we'll definitely be 2 people. We will definitely be hiring a GM. The good news is obviously I've done that role, and so I feel capable of running the head coaching search alongside some trusted AMBSC leadership. And so we will look to keep those 2 roles separate. And in terms of profile I think you're asking profile for the GM. I think it's critically important that person have MLS experience. It's such a specialized system with the salary cap that I think that's vitally important. Obviously, it'll be a global search. We'll cast a wide net. But if I have confidence in any market, in terms of what I know the GM market in and around MLS over the last 20 years.
Next question, we'll go to Zach Klein. Zach, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. Garth, when did you lose confidence and faith in Carlos?
I don't think it's a matter of hanging the fortunes of the club on any one person. I think we evaluate everybody collectively, and ultimately any issues with the club ultimately stop with me. So and I don't know that we ever lost confidence. We just wanted to evolve our player model, and again, we wanted to really take a look at 2025 and have people in place that we're going to be able to take maximum advantage of the salary cap flexibility, the 2 designated player spots that are open, and really try to evolve things like the club philosophy going forward. And ultimately, we thought that a change in leadership at the head coach and GM positions were the best way to do that.
Next question, Tom Bogert. Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for taking the time, Garth. You alluded to the coaching search a little bit before. Just wanted to ask for an update on the status of that search, where you guys are at.
Coaching search is underway. We're working with a third-party company to help us with that, and we again cast a global net. But we're literally, Tom, in the process of speaking to people. Our interim head coach, Rob Valentino, will be part of that process. And again, we believe that our existing group can make the playoffs, and we are very focused on making that happen over the last 7 games of the season. And likewise, we want to get the head coaching search underway so that that person could be in place as soon as the season ends and be involved in end of season decisions with respect to players. And again, trying to maximize the potential to turn this thing around quickly in 2025.
Next question will go to Sydney Hunt. Sid, go ahead.
Hey Garth, Sydney Hunt, Scarves and Spikes. Hope you're doing well. You mentioned the head coaching search. Is there a possibility that the GM will be part of that search as well?
Yes, in the sense that I'm the acting GM, so I'll be leading the search, and the GM will be involved. I think as a practical matter, a lot of the candidates we want to talk to for the GM search may be employed by other teams, and those guys aren't going to be available till after the season. So I do think that given my former experience, I can bridge that gap pretty readily, and I can represent what a GM is going to want as we go forward with a head coaching search.
Next question, Sam Jones. Sam, go ahead.
Hey Garth, Sam Jones, 5-stripe final. Will the scouting department stay the same in terms of its structure and personnel going forward?
I think that's a matter for ultimately the new GM to decide. Certainly we will look at that and we'll say, hey, what part of our processes went well and what didn't. And again, we believe we signed a good player in Moranchik, and that the summer window ultimately will be seen as successful. I wonder if had we signed Moranchik in the last 2 weeks of the window as opposed to at the beginning of the window, if some of the perceptions of that window might be different. But at the end of the day, we have lots and lots of resources. We were very public about the players that we had sold, but that money hasn't gone anywhere. It's still sitting in our pocket, ready to be spent. And look, one of the reasons that we were a little cautious in the summer, we said in the summer we would only sign players that were so good that any coach would want to coach them and they could fit any style of play. And we refused to panic at the end of the window. We refused to push the envelope or to lower our standards even an iota, because we knew that having 2 DP spots open for a new general manager and a new coach was going to make our job enormously attractive and give us tremendous flexibility heading into 2025.
Next question, Joe Patrick. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Garth, Joe Patrick, 5-stripe final as well. Just wanted to kind of get some, clarification on what duties the GM role will entail. If you could just outline that, I guess, for people who, I don't know if that's going to change or not with a new person on board, specifically with how they will function within the existing structure of the front office and what you've been building since you joined.
Yeah, the GM, largely speaking, is going to be in charge of salary cap contracts and picking the players, bringing in talent and building the roster, all the off-field stuff. I mean, the separation for GM and coach for me is very simple. The coach is on the field. So that's tactics and lineups. It's culture, it's locker room, it's schedule, those types of things. And the GM is everything off the field. And again, this is, if you guys go back and look at my career, I mean, this is how it was set up in Salt Lake. That's how it was set up in Seattle. There's no change there. There's no evolution. There's a separation of church and state. On the field coach, off the field GM, in terms of relating to the organization, and doing things like cap and contracts and roster building and long-term planning and succession planning and maintenance of the academy, et cetera. And again, even within like the academy and player development structure, the thing to keep in mind is that the two positions are complementary. Again, the GM role is gonna say, hey, here's how we want to structure the academy and the development staff, and the coach and the technical group is going to tell us, what methodology we should apply. How do we train our players in a way that gives us the best chance of bringing them into the first team?
Next question, Luke Hetrick. Luke, go ahead.
Hey, Garth. Luke Hetrick, WSB. You were saying a few minutes ago that you wanted Carlos to help guide through that summer transfer window. What had to change between the time you guys parted ways with Gonzalo a few months back to this point for him to keep his job?
The evaluation was about the body of work. And the body of work, not just over the last 18 months when I've been here, but over the last 5 years. And ultimately, we decided that despite some incredible successes, I mean, Carlos was founding member of this organization. He's the one who set the bar so high, winning not just the 2018 MLS Cup, but Campeones Cup and the Open Cup. So he really did a tremendous job for the organization over many years. And ultimately, as we evolved our player model and we went into more of an analytics-based player evaluation process, we just felt that ultimately we were gonna evolve, and again wanted to preserve our flexibility going into 2025 and really look at it and say, hey, for the first time we have a clean slate. We have an ability to kind of relaunch the franchise, and we're really excited about that opportunity.
Rob Ussery. Rob, next question. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey Garth, Rob Usher from Five Stripe Final. You mentioned you've been here for 2 years. You've had the chance to fully evaluate the club. Have you been able to pinpoint a specific flaw in strategy that has seen the club fall from where they were in 2018 and 2019 to where they see themselves today?
I want to be careful because I never think that there's one right answer to these types of things. And the club did a tremendous number of things right at their inception and at launch. I mean, it was the best expansion launch in sports history. So I don't think it's for me to criticize what came before me. What I would say is, in terms of the organization I want to build, I'm a lawyer by training, and we used a lot of processes at Latham that I think carry over well to a sports organization. And we are trying to use all the resources at AMBSE and bring them to bear to build the best processes and the best analytics and the best organization we can across the soccer team. And as you guys have heard me say, if we're building systematically, if we're building methodically, if we're adding one DP a window, again, if we can add 2 DPs in a window, that's awesome. I've never been able to pull that off in my career, but we endeavor to do that. And we're going to try to get back on the sports and get the machine pointed the right direction again for Atlanta United. And again, the potential here is it's astronomical. I think we have the best facilities in the league. We certainly have the best stadium in the league. And so it's all here for us. It's just a matter of taking advantage of it. And so all I see here is the same as when I was hired. I see incredible opportunity. And what we didn't have was the flexibility. We had to unmake a number of decisions to put ourselves in a position to finally move forward. And we've been able to do that. And it's been painful. I'm not going to claim it wasn't bumpy along the way. I'm not going to claim that this year hasn't been a disappointment, but we can also still salvage this year. We got 7 games left. We got 4 home games. We're in the last playoff spot. Like, we can do this. We just spent more money than any other team in the summer transfer window. We added, we think, 2 good players in Amador and Moranchik. And so we think we have real good possibility of making the playoffs this year. That remains the goal. And then building off of that, again, 2 DP spots, new GM, potentially a new coach. And we think that gives us the maximum flexibility and the maximum possibility to turn this thing around.
Next question, back to Doug. Doug, go ahead. Your line's open.
Hey, Garth, a couple of questions for you, please. You've got several people on staff now who have the salary cap experience, who have GM experience. Will internal candidates be considered for the GM role? And secondly, can you please clarify? Did you say you're already talking to coaching candidates? And do you prefer that they have MLS experience, much like the GM?
Yeah, we are not going to consider internal candidates for the general manager role. And yes, we are talking to coaching candidates. I would say that broadly speaking, some tie to MLS or an MLS-like system helps. So here's what I mean by that. Several leagues now are going, there have versions of financial fair play or have versions of a salary cap. Spain, perhaps most prominently, has a salary cap, or what's effectively enforced as a salary cap as a function of revenue. So, and the key metric is simply, does a coach have an understanding that we can't simply come in and turn over all the players based on a rigid coaching philosophy? So we're looking for someone who's collaborative, who's pragmatic, who's flexible. Look, I think in that context, I think some connection to MLS probably helps, but I also don't think it's the only thing, or that it's the thing that will ultimately make a decision one way or the other.
Got time for a few more. We're going to go to Paul Newberry now. Paul, go ahead. You're open. Paul, you're still muted on my end.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay. Hey, Garth, Paul Newberry from Associated Press. Just a couple of things you mentioned. The coaching. So coaching and GM searches are essentially separate to you. You don't have to have a GM in place, obviously, to hire a coach. And on top of that, I presume you've sort of Rob is a candidate for that coaching job on a permanent basis as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And to be clear, I'm the acting GM. So from that perspective, we do have a GM in place in terms of me running the coaching search. And yes, Rob is a candidate and is part of that process.
Next question, back to Felipe. Felipe, go ahead. You're open.
Thanks, Chris. Garth, you mentioned in wanting to evolve the player model and evolve the club philosophy moving forward, which makes a lot of sense under your guidance now at the club. My question is, what does that mean for the rest of the front office and how you view it? Are there more changes coming, specifically in the recruiting strategy in that team that Carlos was overseeing? What's the future in terms of how you approach setting that team up in the future?
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the things that I think you guys have heard me talk about from the early days is we try to come in and I don't know if upgrade is the right word, but to evolve our process when it came to player personnel and player evaluation. We hired Source Football as an outside data consultant. We added a data engineer and a gentleman named Akshay, and we made Arjun the head of the department so he could focus on more strategic tasks. So we pumped a whole bunch more resources into the analytics side. We also added scouts. Now, the scouts were by and large in some of the youth spaces, but we knew we needed to fortify the academy and to raise the level of talent that was going to be coming through the pipeline. So we did those things, and those things have been in place, call it from the summer of 2023. So there actually was some change there at the beginning, and I understand that may have been behind the scenes. So I think we're through a lot of the big changes with respect to player analysis. And again, I feel like the summer window of last year was largely successful. I think we added some good pieces in the winter window of this year. And I think we added another really good piece in Ranchik and maybe two good pieces with Amador as well. And so I do feel like that process has been working. And now what we can do with a new coach and a new GM is potentially add a little rocket fuel to that and say, hey, we know how to handle the basics. And look, a new GM may come in and say, hey, I want to organize the scouts differently. I want them to look at different things, or I want to divide up the world differently in terms of how we handle video scouting versus in person. Stuff like that could happen. But again, the core processes in terms of using analytics, using objective evidence as the basis for what we're doing, that's here. And again, I sense that everybody wants us to sign, 3 or 4 players every window, and that's not always possible. Again, we have to preserve our resources and spend them wisely. And if we spend them wisely, then we only have to spend them once. And as much as this year's been bumpy, again, we have done everything we can to preserve our optionality for 2025. And as a result, we have some flexibility. We have open DP spots, and we believe we're in a position to make the team better, building off of what hopefully will have been a playoff team last year and a playoff team this year. So again, that's the ambition, to consistently compete and hopefully raise our level in 2025.
I'll go back to Tom Bogert. Tom, go ahead.
Thanks. Just kind of a quick, direct one. The club has been reported that Patrick Vieira has had conversations with Atlanta United over the coaching vacancy. Is that something you're able to comment on?
We're not going to comment on any kind of individual coaching candidate as the search goes on. We're going to conduct the process, and then we'll give everybody an update when we're ready to do that. But there's not going to be a formal timetable on it, just as there won't be a formal timetable on the GM search. We're going to talk to lots of folks, and we're going to try to get educated. I think there's a lot of different approaches that can work, and a lot of different combinations of that GM and coach that can work. So we're really excited, Tom, about digging in and doing some homework and getting to know some people. And, we have time to do it and do it right. And again, if just like with picking players, if we do it right, we only have to do it once.
Two more. We'll go to Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Garth, just something you just mentioned a second ago about, there being an expectation of, a certain amount of signings, 3 or 4, whatever it is, every window. Do you think that there's been kind of too much of that at this club in its history, as to just shuffling big players in and out of the club and not kind of having that continuity year to year?
Look, again, I don't think it's my place to criticize anything that's come before. I'll just tell you what's worked for me. And what's worked for me is methodically adding, 1 or 2 pieces at a time. Because if you're being completely transparent, you need to come in and see how they do. And because when you add these big pieces, when you add the DPs, when you add the 10s and the 9s, et cetera, you really want to come in and see how they do, because you want to be able to modify your model to make sure you tweak to their specific characteristics. And you can always look at things on video. And nowadays we can measure just about everything before these guys come in. But you still have to see how they adjust to America and how they adjust to Atlanta, and how they take to the lifestyle and the culture and the language and all these things. And by staggering them, potentially 1 window apart, when you talk about some of these big players, it allows you to be better informed as you continue to build the team. And I totally understand why an audience, a fan base, especially, look, it's been a period here of a couple of years where it's not been a title contender. There's not been playoff series victories. So that frustration is totally well-founded and understandable. And what we have to focus on is making sure we do it right. Because again, we get 1 chance to spend the salary cap money. We get 1 chance to spend the GAM. We get 1 chance to spend the proceeds of the players that we sold. So that's what we're focused on. We're going to do it methodically. I think at my initial press conference, you might even been you that asked the question, Joe. I said sometimes I'm going to move more slowly, more methodically. I might frustrate some of the fan base in terms of how deliberate I can be with some of this stuff. But that served me well in my career. Trying not to panic, trying not to react emotionally, trying to just build things and get them fixed such that when they're fixed, they stay fixed.
Last question, Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Garth, I'm curious, considering the last year didn't make it out of the first round of the playoffs, this year kind of barely hanging on to a playoff spot right now. But as you say, there's still matches left. You've had to fire a coach. You've had to fire now a GM. Are you feeling any more pressure than usual about the job you're doing, the results that you're generating?
Look, I think that the results have not been up to our standard for the last 5 years. Certainly, let's just talk about me. Those results are not are not up to my expectation. So yeah, I mean, look, every decision ultimately is mine with respect to Atlanta United, and has been since I arrived. So yeah, it's not up to that standard. And look, I am happy and excited about the ability now to pick a general manager and pick a head coach, and to have a lot of flexibility, to pick designated players whose personalities, whose long-term expectations may be better aligned with a club focused on some more stability. Instead of buy, develop, sell, can we sign prime age designated players so they can play in most of the games? and they are committed to the club. They are committed to Atlanta United, and they have the potential to stay here for a long time. And, I think we've seen, from the inception of Atlanta United, when players are here and the fan base embraces them. The most beloved players in Atlanta United history, guys like Brad Guzan, Joseph Martinez, part of those guys have been here for a long time in Brad's case, and certainly Joseph was as well. So we want that stability, we want that continuity, and look, yes, absolutely, our expectation has been better, and look, I think my track record speaks for itself in terms of what I want to do, and the reason why I came to Atlanta United is simply to win championships. It's nothing less than that. And I really felt like we were on a path where we weren't capable of winning championships. And so we had to undo a bunch of things in order to set us up with a different foundation to go forward and be successful long-term. Because at the end of the day, making the playoffs isn't our goal. At the end of the day, winning a playoff series isn't our goal. We're here to win the whole thing. And there's not really any point in doing this unless that's the objective. Given the resources we have, given the ambition of the club, everything is possible here. And that's really what I'm excited about now is for the first time for me, truly in 2 years, we have the ability now to truly go forward. We have cleared the decks. We have incredible possibility. We can now bring our resources to bear. And I'm really excited about that opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Garth. Thanks, everyone. We'll have a recording out here shortly. Have a good day.